Hello and welcome to 123stitch.com. Today I'm going to show you how to take your finished cross stitch design and turn it into one of these adorable flat fold stand-ups. This is an older design I did by Little House Needleworks called ABC 123, and the stand-up itself is made with 4 pieces of mat board, fabric, batting, lots of glue, and it features this little tab on the bottom that lets it stand up, and it also lets you fold it flat to put away for storage. This is nice for seasonal designs that you want to change out or just a different way to display your cross stitch. I'm going to show you exactly how to make one, but before we get started, please go down below and click on that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of our next videos. And everything I mentioned today will be listed as a link in the description. Let's go ahead next with the supplies you're going to need. Okay, the first thing you're going to need is obviously your stitched piece. And I'm going to be putting together a Stitches Quaker by Luminous Fiber Arts. I just did this one on a 16 count Aida with one color of DMC floss. So that's the design we're going to be doing. You need a background fabric that goes with the design. This is the one I've chosen. We need a couple of pieces of batting. And when you're choosing your batting color, be mindful of the fabric you've chosen. The white looks good on this one. I first had a cream colored batting out and that dulled the design. So just be mindful of that when you're choosing your batting. I have some cording that I made for the outside edge of the design. We are going to need 4 pieces of mat board or press on sticky boarding. I will show you how to cut that, but one thing I want to mention is you don't want the thicker foam core board for this because there's 4 pieces of it and the thinner the better in this case. I like the sticky board to hold one side of the fabric or the batting down, but I only had 2 pieces, so I have 2 plain ones with mat board, and I'll show you how that works just as well. You need something to cut your fabric and your mat board with. I like to use a cutting mat and a rotary cutter or a utility knife or box cutter. And for the fabric, for the mat board, obviously. You can also just use scissors and a ruler to cut it. That works just as well. We need Aleene's Tacky glue. We use quite a bit of this in the design. So you'll want a nice full bottle. And along with that, a wet cloth and a dry cloth nearby help a lot because we're going to be getting lots of glue on our fingers. So it helps to keep your fingers clean. In one part of the assembly, I use Scor-Tape, which is a double-sided adhesive tape, acid-free. I use that to attach the cross-stitch piece to the mat board instead of glue. I find that the tape works better. We might need some sewing thread that matches our fabric and our backing fabric. And I use this only on the corners if necessary. Sometimes you can't get those corners tight enough, and being able to sew them up just a little bit really makes it nice, neat corners. Some pins are very helpful, just regular straight pins. I like the ones that have a big head on the top so that it's easy to pull them out. And I think that's it. If there's anything else, I'll be sure to mention it and link it in the description. Let's go ahead and get started next with measuring our design and figuring out what size fabric and mat board we need. Okay, the first thing we want to do is measure our design and decide how big the finished design is going to be. So my design is about 6.5 inches by 6.5 inches. A good rule of thumb is to have about 1/4 inch all the way around. That gives, you don't need a whole lot more than that when you're doing a stand-up. You want the design itself to show up. So 1/4 inch all around is perfect. That's pretty much what I did on this one. So if it's 6.5 and I need 1/4 inch and 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch, that makes 7 inches this way, 7 inches that way. Does that make sense? Extra 1/4 inch gives me 6.5, 6 3/4, 7. So 7 by 7 is going to be my finished design size. What I'm going to do is cut my mat boards to 7 by 7, since that's our finished design size. You can see that's going to work out perfect. You're going to cut 4 pieces using your either a rotary cutter, a box cutter, utility knife. Get them as straight and even as possible. You need them to be uniform, so measure them carefully and trim if necessary. So we'll set those aside. So that is our design size, 7 by 7. Then we come back to our fabric and we need to cut out some extra fabric so that we can turn it around the back side and attach it. So what I like to do is about 1.5 inches. So all you need to do is go to the edge of your design and measure out 1.5 inches from the very edge. 1.5 inches. And again, you can use a regular ruler to cut this, or you can use your rotary cutter and cutting mat. I'm going to line that up, and then I am going to cut. And we're going to do that on all 4 sides, extra 1.5 inches. It doesn't have to be exact. This is just getting turned over on the back side, so you don't need to be exact at all. You can use your regular scissors and cut it out. I think I need to change the blade in my rotary cutter. Okay, and we're going to do one more here. 1.5 inches. And we'll cut this one out. So now we have our design cut out, and we're going to need to cut the backing fabric. So see, this is going to be a good size to turn to the back. Don't really need more than that, so that's perfect. Now we're going to cut backing fabric. And on the backing fabric, I'm going to cut 2 pieces that are this size. And if you want to just do quick and easy, just kind of eyeball it. You don't need it to be exact. I'm going to cut off this salvage edge here. And then we'll do approximate. Obviously, you don't want to cut your fabric, so be careful when doing this. You can also just mark the fabric. That works as well. And then this one. Okay, there's one piece. We're going to cut a second piece that's exactly the same size. Well, exactly. Doesn't have to be exact. Again, it's just approximate. As I said, this is the part we're just turning over on the back, so it doesn't matter terribly much if it's exact. There we go. Okay, so we have 2 pieces that are the same size as our cross stitch piece. Now we need a 3rd piece of backing fabric, but it's a slightly different size. It's going to be, now my design's square, but yours may not be. It needs to be the same size this way, but down here we're going to add an extra 2 inches, about, approximate. So if we take our piece and put it right here and add a couple of inches, we're going to need to cut right about here. I'm just going to use the scissors since my rotary cutter's not liking me today. And then we cut up this way. Okay, let's get that out of the way. So, again, what we have is our cross stitch piece. Then we have 2 pieces of fabric. that are the same size as the cross stitch piece. Then we have a third piece of fabric that is the same width, but about 2 inches longer down here. Okay, so that's all the cutting we need to do for now, except for the batting pieces, but that's going to be easy. Let me get to that next. Okay, we are going to take 2 of our backing boards, and I'm going to take the 2 that have the sticky board because it's easier. And we're going to peel off the backing, and we're going to lay it right down on the center of our batting. Now, if you don't have a sticky board, that's okay. You can attach the batting with glue. It's just, I find it easier to attach it to the sticky board. Get this off. And put that one down. And now we just need to trim. Okay, one of these is going to go on the back of our cross stitch piece, or the front of our cross stitch piece. It's going to make it nice and fluffy and protect those stitches. And one of them is going to go on the very back of the design. I like that to just kind of add a nicer look to the back. It's not as flat, which is fabric on cardboard. Okay, we'll get those pieces out of the way. All right. So the next thing we need to do is attach everything. So we're going to put the 2 pieces with batting aside for now. And we're going to take the 2 pieces that do not have any sticky backing or batting. I'm going to put my cross stitch piece aside and my bigger piece aside. And we're going to deal just with these right now. So what we're going to do is lay these down kind of in the center of our design. And we're going to be folding the ends over and gluing them in place. And this is the messy part. I like to keep my glue upside down in a cup so that it's always ready to go. So let's get this started. Get my glue going here. Okay, we're just going to lay a bunch of glue down. Spread that glue around, and then we're going to be turning corners under. What I like to do on the corners before I glue is just cut these corners off almost down to like 1/4 of an inch. It's approximate, but that way you have less bulk to deal with. Okay, now we're going to glue this in place. I'm going to bring the corners down and bring the ends over. Just get that glued down. I'll put a little glue further out here. This will eventually all be glued. Right now we're just getting it tacked down. You want to get it on here as flat as possible. You want those corners to be as tight as possible. Helps to put some extra glue on the edges. Just pull it down. The tacky glue is really nice because it dries clear and it also dries pretty quickly so that you have some room to play with. I mean, it'll hold it in place while you're playing with the design. Okay, our last corners here. Kind of fold that down. Okay. There we go. So, beautiful. That's going to be one of our backings. And then we'll do the same with our next piece of fabric. Cut these corners first. Okay. Get some glue going here. And then bring the corners down. Flip this over. Try to miter that corner as best you can, just so it lays flat. This is where the wet rag comes in handy. If you ever feel like you have too much fabric, you can also trim some more down. Generally about 1.5 inches is good, but if you weren't as exact when you're cutting, you might need to trim it down a little bit. It just needs to cover the back side. The rest of it's going to get covered. We're going to be gluing 2 of the fabric pieces together, so all of this will be hidden. Your goal is to just get it attached, but also to get it as flat and even as you could. Some people do hot glue here. I think the hot glue, it doesn't give you enough time to work with it because it dries so fast, but also it doesn't dry flat. It's going to be a little bumpy. So, and you want these to fit together nice and flat, so bumpy is not the best thing. But if you like to use a glue gun instead of regular glue, then go ahead and do that. It does work. Okay, so those 2 are glued in place. Let's do the next part after I clean my hands here. I just realized I neglected to mention one more piece of fabric you need to cut. You need to cut one piece of fabric that is about 2 inches by 6 inches. This is going to be for that little bit on the bottom there. Now you can use a ribbon if you choose. Just cut a piece of ribbon. That works perfectly as well. To do one that matches the fabric though, just cut it about 2 inches by 6 inches, fold it in half, and then fold the 2 ends to the half. So it looks like that. Now you can sew this edge closed or you can glue it closed. I'm going to glue it closed right now since we don't have the machine in front of me. I'm going to glue it closed and then just put a book on it so it settles up real good and set it aside so it'll be ready when we're ready to use it. Ribbons work really well too, but I kind of like it to match the fabric. I'm just going to set that aside here. Put a couple heavy books on it so it dries flat, and we'll continue on. The next thing I want to do is attach our cross stitch to a piece of the sticky board that has the batting on it. So we're going to put the wrong side right on top of the batting. And we're going to do just like framing. We're going to try to space it out here just by the look of it. I have Aida cloth, which is sometimes easier because you can see the lines really well. And what I like to do here is use my pins. Stick a pin right in the top. Doesn't have to hold it real well. It just kind of holds it a little bit so you can see how your spacing looks. And then we're going to be using our Scor-Tape to attach the back of the design to the back of the board. Straighten that out a little bit. See how that looks. That end needs to come down a tiny bit. It's nice when you only have 1/4 of an inch to play with, and it's easier to kind of center it. That looks good across the top. Put another pin up there. That looks good there. See what the bottom looks like. Since we're going to be taping it on the back instead of gluing, we can play around with it a little bit more to make sure it's doing what we want it to do. Okay, pretty happy with that to start with. So let's turn this over. And we are going to trim our corners again. I'm going to use the rotary cutter. I'm going to go down about 1/4 of an inch there. Okay. Now we're going to be using our tape. This is, like I said, double-sided Scor-Tape. And the first thing I like to do is bring those corners down. Just bring it straight down, pull it tight. Let's take a look again and see how it looks. Yep, I think that looks good. Okay, so I'm going to start on one side here. What we're going to be doing is bringing this down like this so that the corners are mitered. That's why we tacked the corners down first. I'm going to cut a length of this, and we're going to lay it right about here. You know what I want to do first though, is I want to get the tape off of these. I'm going to get the back side off of these so that the sticky is down. And I want to thank whoever mentioned in my last video that a stiletto helps get the backing off, because it does. Look how much easier that is. Lay this down up here. Okay, and then we'll get the backing off. And I like to do the tape instead of gluing. I just think it's a lot easier to play with than glue. It's fine for the fabric, but when you're doing your cross stitch piece, I think the tape works better. We're just making sure that looks nice and straight. It does. Okay, we're going to do the next corner. Take this end off. Again, if you're in a hurry and you want to do hot glue on everything, no problem with that. That'll work. I just think it's if you've got the time, then do a little bit more just to make sure that you're getting your finished look like you want it to look. That is crooked, so we're gonna loosen that one up a little bit. There we go, now it looks straight. Okay. And you can use any double-sided tape you want. I like this Scor-Tape and the acid-free part of it. Protect our cross stitch as much as possible. So we can get that off. There we go. Okay, pull this down tight. Check for straightness. That looks good. Make sure we still are good here. Yeah, that's too tight. Just take your time, make sure it all looks straight. Okay, and we just have this one side left here. Then I'm going to show you what we can do in the corners to make them just look a little bit better. Let's see what that looks like on that side. Okay, that looks good. I'm going to take my pins out. Okay, now we want our corners to be tight and not rounded like that. See how that's a little rounded? So that's where the only part of lacing that I do. I don't like lacing my whole design, but I have no problem just sewing up those corners. So what I'm going to do is take a little bit of thread and a needle, a sewing needle. Thread my needle. What we're going to do is just sew up the corners, just so that they're a little tighter. Sometimes I even have to do it on the fabric, but in this case I think our fabric is okay. This does not want to thread. There we go. I'm just going to take a little bit of thread, do a quick little knot here. Doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be pretty, it's all going to be hidden. But see how the corner is got a gap there? What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my needle and thread and close up that gap. So I'm just going to put a stitch on each side. You can see what I'm doing there. Whoops, that pulled through. Go, let's do that again. You can see what I'm doing. I'm taking a stitch on each side, and I'm just closing up the gap. And we're going to go from a rounded corner to perfectly pointy corner. Just putting a needle through one side of the gap, out to the other side, all the way to the top. Knotting that off. And what it does is it just pulls our corners nice and tight. Let me trim the thread here and show you what we've got. Okay, now we've got a nice pointy corner as opposed to the rounded corner there. Not a big deal, but it's not a lot of work to make it just perfect. So it's going to make your finished design look a lot nicer if they have pointy corners rather than rounded and a little messy. So I'm going to do the other 3 corners on here, and then I'll come back and we'll do the next part. Okay, I have done all 4 corners, just closed up that gap, and now I think it looks perfect. I'm going to set this aside, and now we're going to deal with our last piece of mat board with the batting on it. And we're going to take that bigger piece of fabric. We're going to lay the mat board down, fluffy side down, on top of our fabric, towards the top. So we're going to have more fabric down here at the bottom. We're going to cut off our corners like we've done before. And this time when we're gluing, we're going to glue just the top down to here. We're going to leave this dangling. So, like we did before, we're going to get our glue. And we're going to put a bunch of glue on here. Okay. And now we're going to start. Clean that off. Okay, now we're going to turn our fabric down and start attaching it like we did those other pieces. Try to bring the corners down first and then get it as flat as we can, as tight as we can. This is going to be the very back of our piece. Try to get your corners nice and neat, unless we want to sew up those corners. Here we go. Get as flat as we can. Get that all attached. And then we're going to start assembling our whole thing here. Let's see what our corners look like. Looks okay. Okay. Now, when you put this together, this is where people get confused because we have 4 pieces, and in what order do they go together? I always had a hard time with that as well. What I like to do is label my pieces. We're not going to see this, so I'm just going to write 1, and then these are my 2 fabric pieces. I'm going to do 2, 3, and then 4. That's the order that we're going to put them together. Okay, we have all our pieces ready to go, and we are about to assemble this. If you notice that I have a different fabric here, it's because I put it all together, glued it all in place, and then I discovered that the camera didn't record any of it. So we started over, different fabric. We have our pieces numbered 1, 2, 3, and 4. 2 and 3 are actually identical. 1 is the piece with the extra tab on it, and 4 is the cross stitch. First of all, this needs to go this way. Think of the tab as the binding on your project. So that goes at the top. You can even draw an arrow here if that helps. We're going to take piece 1 and we're going to put piece 2 right on top of it. We're going to take our glue, and this is where we're going to do lots and lots of glue. We're going to go all the way on the design here and get glue all over the place. Remember, this glue dries clear, so it's okay if it seeps out the edges a little bit, but we want to do our best to get it all stuck in place. We're leaving the top portion alone for right now. That's going to come with the next piece. I find that this part is the most confusing to people, so we'll take it slow. Lots of glue. Okay, I use my finger to spread the glue on the edges. Make sure it goes all the way out to the edge. Now, if you don't want to use your fingers, you can use a paintbrush. But I find that just getting those pieces in there. Getting the glue all the way to the edges really helps. Spread that all around. Okay, one more thing we want to do before we put that piece on top is we want to grab our connecting piece and we want to glue it right to the center. We're going to find the center of our design and we're just going to glue this right in there. And I like to, it doesn't matter too much how far you come up, and ultimately we're going to leave about an inch and a half, and this is going to go on the other side. So I say about the top third put up there. Now we're going to take piece 2 and we're going to put it right on top of this one. We're going to line up the edges and we're going to hold it down in place a little bit. The tacky glue does set up fairly quickly, which is nice. We can make sure it's squared up. And if we see some glue that has seeped through anywhere, we can kind of get that out a little bit, but it will dry clear. It will also be hidden by the cording that we're going to put on. Okay, that piece is in place. Now we're going to take piece number 3. And it's helpful to remember that fabric goes to fabric and you're always gluing to the wrong side of something. So you're not going to be gluing to the right side of it. We're going to put this fabric side to fabric side. That seems to fit better. And then we're going to be folding this down over the top. So we're going to put glue just on the top half here, just to where that part folds down. And we're going to put a little bit of glue here on the edge so that it holds in place. Okay, let's spread that around. Get that on there nice and tight. Okay. Looks like I need to come a tiny bit further down here. Okay, and this is where the wet rag comes in handy. And a dry rag. Okay, now these, we're going to make sure this is lined up, but these 2 ends we want to come in just slightly. So we're going to fold that down and we're going to pull it down tight. We're going to try to keep those folds inside a little bit. And we're just going to stretch that and let the glue catch it. Make sure everything's nice and straight. Top is even. And glue that down. Now we're almost done because we're going to put the last piece on. Before we do that though, we're going to put the other part of our connector up here. And what I like to do is to do about an inch and a half on the bottom. So I'm using the grid on my ruler here, on my cutting mat, to tell me where about an inch and a half is, and then I'm going to fold up. So I'm going to put glue here, inch and a half, fold it up. It doesn't have to be exact, it's just enough to hold it open. Okay, that's in place. Now the last thing is we put piece number 4 down, and that is our counted cross stitch. This is the bottom of our design, so we're putting the bottom to the bottom. And once again, we're doing lots of glue. I know it seems like a lot of glue, but it works really well. It holds it all in place very well. Okay, let's spread that around. My dog is resting over there, but it sounds like she's having a nightmare. Dakota, you're okay, baby. You're okay, Dakota. She's been at daycare and she's exhausted. Tires her out, which is a good thing for both of us. Okay. All right, that looks pretty good. Let me clean my fingers off. And then we'll put the top on. I'm gonna make sure that looks nice and even everywhere. Needs to come up a little. You can kind of do this to square it up. There we go. Press down. I'm going to make sure it's nice and square before we let it set. That looks good. Okay, now I'm going to put a towel on top of this, and I'm going to put a whole bunch of heavy books on top of it, and we're going to let it sit for about 30 minutes to really set. And then we're going to come back and we're going to put the cording on, and we will be done. Okay, here is our finished flat fold stand-up. Turned out pretty good. Now we're just going to put some cording around it. This is some cording that I made with the same DMC color as used in the design. And when you put on cording, you want to decide where the end pieces are going to be, because that's the part you want to hide. If you're doing an ornament, you can often do that on the top. You can cover it with a bow or a button or something. In this case, we're going to start and finish at the bottom. So we're going to take one of the ends here, and we're going to take our stiletto, and we're just going to poke that end into the seam a little bit. Kind of hide it by poking it down in there. And then we're going to take some glue again, and we're going to glue this on. We're just going to do a line of glue along the edge there, and we're going to lay the cording on top. You don't want to stretch it, you just want to pat it down. You can use pins to hold this in place if that's easier for you. It doesn't look like we'll need that in this one. Okay, we're just going to lay this around the corner. Pat it down in place. You can use any kind of trim you want. I like to make cording that matches the design. You can use a Kreinik custom quarter if you haven't used that before. It's super easy to use, and it makes really nice cording. This is kind of messy on the top. Good thing the glue dries clear. I'm gonna lay this down on the top. Press down gently. We're gonna go around this corner. Line of glue. Put our cording down. And then we're almost done. Go down to the end here. And we're just going to finish up. And when you get to the very end, you just want to put a little bit of extra glue in there. Looks like I already have extra glue. Poke the second end down into that hole a little bit. And then just clip off your extra thread. And you're done. It doesn't look like I have any scissors nearby, so we're just clip off the extra thread, the cording's on, and your stand-up is finished. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you have any questions, let us know in the comment section below. Also, if there's any other videos you'd like to see, let me know. I do read all of the comments and answer them. I'd love to hear from you. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on anything, and we will see you again soon.